Whoa, couldn't swallow for a second. Welcome to episode 121 of the Valley Sports Talk podcast. As we're off to a hot start, I went to talk and all of a sudden my voice just did not come out. We are back
Uh,
with another episode. We hope you guys enjoyed our latest episode, or not latest, our latest video, as it was a bit of a different video, but it seemed to have gotten good reviews. So we're gonna try in the near future that again. This time we're gonna have mics because we did realize that the audio was a bit hard to hear at some points when we had our backs turned to you. So we do have wireless mics for our next Break 30 episode, which should come in the next few weeks. But without that, we our last episode came before July 1st, so we have all the free agent moves to talk about, which is what we're going to talk about for the majority of today.
yes, very interesting. Free agency did bring a lot of signing and stuff, but like you said, I do just want to do a quick shout out to that golf video. It was a lot of fun to record and play in, and we're definitely going to do a lot more in the future. Hopefully, have an actual camera person, so it's not you and me, because you could tell when Noah's shooting, I'm pretty shaky. So we'll get someone to do that for us, and we'll have mics, so it'll be a lot better in the future. But I mean, it's kind of nice that we didn't beat it, so we get another chance at it.
Yeah, I mean, for the first little bit, I don't know if you really wanted to see my shots, so it's okay that you're kind of shaky.
Yeah, fair enough. Speaking of a shaky, these guys aren't really shaky, but you and I always seem to think they are. We'll kick it off with the Edmonton Oilers. Um, they were losing a lot of players to try and free up cap space to do Bouchard deals and try and get McDavid signed up, but they do bring in one of the bigger center winger middle six guys in Mangiapane for 2 years, 3.6.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with the Mangiapane signing. I don't think he's really what you're not going to see really what he was a couple years ago, where he scored, I think, 30 goals in Calgary. I think he's going to be more of a bottom six forward at this point of his career. We saw that last year with Washington. He wasn't the most impactful player. But the one thing that has been said about the Edmonton Oilers, they've had a lot of turnaround in the last like 3 years where they're just sort of shipping out bottom six forwards and plugging them in. And it seems to be working, and it also seems to hurt them at some point. So I would like to see a little bit of stability in their bottom six. I know we'll talk about a couple of the players that did leave their team in a little bit, but yeah, I don't really have an issue with this Mangiapane sign to be in their bottom six for a goal scoring winger in their bottom six.
No, I don't mind it either. I think it's a kind of one that goes under the radar a little bit, but I think he's better than what people think. He had a really good season, obviously last year with the Caps, being close to a President's Trophy winning team, and he was a vital part of that. Like he might not be putting up the points that you'd hope for, but just his play, his grittiness, and even he's decent on defense is good for the Oilers. It's kind of what they need. They already got the offense figured out. So someone that can be the all around kind of forecheck guy is, I think, big for that team. So that was one of the big signings. If you also want to talk about some of the other moves Edmonton made with putting some people in and out.
Yeah, the big one for me, I guess, for guys bringing it in is that we finally saw Isaac Howard go somewhere. The most recent Hobie Baker Award winner, and he signed his ELC right away. There was I think a lot of people thought he was going to be playing at Michigan State again for another year, but since he signed his ELC, he has to go pro. So I don't see why he doesn't slot in on McDavid or Draisaitl's wing. You know, he's a former first round pick by Tampa. They trade away Sam O'Reilly, who's a good prospect in his own right, but I mean he was like the fourth or fifth best player on his London team, and that London team was pretty stacked. So um, I was really hoping that Isaac Howard would maybe end up in the gold and black, but we didn't see that, and he's gonna slot right in beside either McDavid or Draisaitl. So, good move there by the Oilers, getting a nice young prospect that they can slot in right away on day one.
Yeah, 100%. The only other thing about the Oilers I quickly want to go over and get your opinions on are what you feel about the Evan Bouchard signing, 4 years, 10.5 mil.
Yeah, I mean, You figured there was a lot of talk about a possible offer sheet, so it makes sense that Edmonton sort of had to pony up and pay him. I don't know. It's a weird market with the cap going up. The 4 years scares me because I we have talked a bit about how McDavid's going to get about around there, but um, you saw Bush or not what's his name Dobson get 9.5, and I do think Bouchard is a slightly better player than Dobson. They're both very similar as they both can't really defend, but 10.5 maybe is a bit more than I would have paid him. Maybe closer to 10 is what I would have paid him, but the one scary thing for me is that you have $20 million now in Nurse and Bouchard, and they both cannot defend very well. So kind of scary on that and that aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move on to the East to talk about a team that, similar to the Edmonton Oilers, and I guess you can say every team in the league, but struggles to beat Florida in the playoffs. We'll go to Carolina, who had one of the first signings in as soon as free agency started, although it was a re-signing, which there seemed to be a lot as soon as noon hit on July 1st. But the big one was taking a big bet on Logan Stanko in 8 years, $6 million per. He's only 22. I think it's a decent contract. 6 mils, pretty low. 8 years, you get the length. You get him till he's 30, which is huge for Carolina. I think he slots in as a good middle six forward for them. I just haven't. I don't know. I'm not nervous about the contract because I don't think 6 mil is too much, especially with the cap going up. But I am surprised. I don't know about you. I'm surprised just through his career so far that he was able to get an 8 year deal. I thought we were going to kind of see a bridge considering he just came over to Carolina and they only seen him for half a season. But I don't know. Are you shocked about the 8 years or?
Uh, I guess thinking about it that way, where he sort of hasn't played, like this was his first full NHL season. But I had no issues with the 8 years, and I was actually quite surprised that he took a $6 million deal. I would have expected it. I think that's really good for Carolina getting him at six. I think this contract is going to look so good in 2 to 3 years when he's a top six player on that team. Like
That was great.
just since the trade, he fit in so well with Carolina's system. He's such a hardworking player for a small little guy, but I think this contract is going to look so good in 2 to 3 years just based off. I was actually kind of surprised he only got six. I guess he's sort of getting, like you said, he's sort of the 8 year deal. He's getting some, security in Carolina, and it'll take him till he's 30, so he could look for a big payday once he is 30 after those 8 years are up. The cap's just going to keep going up, and he probably will get paid the way he will get better over these 8 years.
Yeah, and then another deal that I think is really good, personally, is another re-signing. As again, there was a lot of these come noon. Is Will Eklund, 3 years, five? What is it, five and a half or
Mark?
something like that?
Yeah.
I can't.
Like
I lost it. I lost it. But it's like five. It's
looking
less than six. It's over five and a half. I'm pretty sure for 3 years, little bridge deal. I think this is really good for San Jose. I think this is one that's good for both San Jose and the player. It's good for San Jose as they're trying to rebuild. They keep the cap down so they can, once they get good, hopefully in 2 years, if they can start contending for a playoff spot, they'll have a lot of cap in that regard still because this number's low, and it's good for the player because it's a bridge deal. So Will Eklund still gets a good amount of money these first 3 years, but if he really performs like he's projected to, after 3 years, he's going to be in for a big payday.
Yeah,
So I
I've
like.
always been a big fan of William Eklund myself. I just think he's a really solid player, and San Jose has a really young future over there. I'm still trying to find. There were so many friggin' signings that this
Oh,
world
it's great.
doesn't have them. Oh, there, Will Eklund, 16, yeah, 5.6.
5.6. Yeah, that's not bad at
Only
all.
22, so he's gonna be 25 by the end of it, and yeah, setting himself up for a good payday if he plays up to that.
100%. We'll move on to the most shocking signing for me personally. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. It's Brock Besser re-signing with the Vancouver Canucks. I did not see this one coming. 7 years, seven and a quarter per year, is just over $50 million for the 7 years. I just thought Brock Besser, being the age he is, 28, Vancouver's like we thought they were going to be good for the last 3 years. It hasn't really worked out other than 2 years ago when they went to They went against Edmonton and pushed them to 7. Other than that, they've been pretty disappointing. And I thought Brock Besser was just going to go, although like there wasn't any turmoil there. I thought he was just going to go and look for a new fresh start, but he came back through July 1st. He pushed it all the way to July 1st and then came back. I'm kind of surprised. I think it's a great signing for Vancouver, obviously. But are you shocked he's back?
I would say yes and no. Mainly the fact that he's an American player, so I thought he might want to get out of the Canadian market, get back to the States where he's from. But I heard that he wanted term, and the most years he was getting on the market was a 5-year deal with worth probably worth more AAV, but he wanted term, he wanted security. So I think that's ultimately what led him back to landing in Vancouver. And I think it's a good deal for both the players. Vancouver does have to figure out, what their team is going to look like these next few years with Hughes and Pedersen. But I think Besser's, he got drafted there. He's been a good player since he's been there. So I would say yes and no that I was shocked, but at the same time, I wasn't like completely shocked. Like it wasn't like the craziest thing that happened, but yeah, no issues on my part.
Yeah, so we'll stay with Vancouver because they did also re-sign two other of their own players come July 1st. They re-signed Thatcher Demko, 3 years, 8.5 mil, and then Connor Garland, 6 years, 6 mil. With the signing of Thatcher Demko, you got two goalies making over $5 million, and they have Artem Shilovs. Believe that's how you pronounce it. Sorry if I butchered it,
Yeah,
but
no, you got it.
so you got two goalies making over 5 mil, and you got a really good goalie in the AHL. Do you see a move coming for Vancouver?
Yeah, obviously Demko, at times he struggles to stay healthy, but whenever he is healthy, he's one of the better goalies in the league. And then this year, with Demko being hurt, Kevin Lankinen showed that he could be a possible starting goalie in this league, and I think he could be. Sheloff's, he wasn't the best in the NHL when he was there. He had an under 900 save percentage, so you would like to see him get a bit better, but he was the Calder Cup MVP, just won the Calder Cup with Abbotsford. So I could see a move. My guess is it's Lankinen moving out, and then Shilovs can sort of slide underneath Demko, because as we know, goalies do take longer to develop into a pro style game. With this, I don't think you move Demko, so I think Lankinen is the odd one out if we do see a goalie move from Vancouver.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We'll do a couple teams in the Metro, as you know the Metro the best. We'll start off with the Devils because it's probably the smallest news, but they signed Connor Brown to a 4 mil 3 year deal, a 4 year 3 mil deal, and they re-signed Jake Allen, who is I know it's not a big name, but he was the biggest goaltending free agent that there was this year, who it was 5 years, 1.9 mil, so it takes him until he's 39. Reports were that he had bigger numbers out there for a 1 or 2 year deal, but he wanted the long term and stay in New Jersey because he's got his family there now and everything. So um, I think obviously keeping Jake Allen is huge for New Jersey to be your backup behind Markstrom, but Connor Brown being able to secure a 4 year, $3 million deal, it just shows how important he was to Edmonton and shows that the rest of the league acknowledges it. And I think that's a really good get for probably a third line winger for a team that's going to be a lot better than they were last year because playoffs, like injuries, ultimately ruin their playoff chances. But
Yeah.
what do you think about the Devils?
Yeah, the Jake Allen one was I guess, a bit surprising just based off how low the AV was, but obviously the term helps out there. I totally agree with what you said. He's 34. I think he wanted some security for his last deal. He didn't want to be constantly moving around in the NHL on 1 to 2 year deals for his last couple of years as a primary backup. And I would say he's probably one of the better backups in the league, if not the best backup in the league, next to guy I just talked about like Kevin Lankinen or guys like that, where they are former starters or have the ability to be a starter on maybe a lower tier team. And the Connor Brown one, as much as, he has been through a lot of big injuries and maybe the money might have been a bit more rich, but we always got to think that the cap's just going to keep going up. So like these deals, and I know we're going to talk about a couple on LA in a bit whenever we get to them on how these guys were maybe overpaid, but you got to look at the fact that the cap is going up, so these deals are going to look, I guess, not as bad, but like we think they're bad just based off how the cap hasn't moved very much over the last few years. But yeah, they got a big energy player. I don't think Connor Brown is the most like skilled forward in the league, like hands wise,
Definitely.
touch, but he's a really hard worker. And yeah, he's one of those complementary pieces that can fit anywhere up and down the lineup. You saw him play with McDavid, and you saw him play on the fourth line. So he's one of those guys that if you have an injury, you can slot him in there with Jack Hughes up on the first line or Nico Hischier on the second, or he can stay on the third and fourth, which is probably where he's best suited. But he's one of those plug and play guys that can almost fit everywhere in your lineup.
100%. Very, very important to have come playoffs and regular season. There's always injuries. So a player that can move up and down is always important. We'll go to the Rangers and Carolina as they had something interesting here. The Rangers sign the biggest D man in this year's free agency, Gavrikov, to a 7x7. And in doing this, they sign and trade K'Andre Miller to the Carolina Hurricanes for basically what the Rangers would have got if Carolina offer sheeted him. So I really like both these moves for both these teams. I think Gavrikov is going to be great for the Rangers. I think is just what they needed to go along Fox and players like that. But for Carolina, I really like Keandre Miller. He's younger, which is kind of like Carolina's been doing this. They've been staying competitive while kind of like growing young talent. And we know Carolina has a lot of really good like defensive defensemen, and bringing a guy like Keandre Miller in, who's a little bit more offensive, who just had like an off year, obviously, I think can be really good for them. So, what do you think about the two top Metro teams and these defense signings?
Yeah, I liked the Keandre Miller trade for both teams.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the Rangers got good back. Scott Morrow was a good D prospect. They got a first round pick. I've never honestly been the biggest fan of Keandre Miller just because I think he was I don't think the Rangers really utilized him the correct way.
That's
He's
what I mean. I
a
think he
guy.
fits way better
He's a big
in Carolina.
guy. He can be offensive, but he used to be a forward, believe it or not. He used to be a big winger. So he's a guy that does have a bit of offensive upside. Oh my God. But he is a bigger defenseman. So I think he'll slot in perfectly on the third pairing with Carolina, maybe even the second pairing. But you look at Carolina's defense, and they are so deep at that position. You got Slavin on the left side. You got Slavin. You got the Russian Nikishin. You got
Yeah,
Keanu Miller, you got Sean Walker.
yeah,
Um, I'm missing one or two other. Jalen Chatfield's still there. You got that's a good top five D, and I'm probably missing another. No, who else is there? Brett, no, I don't know. I'm missing one guy there that is like their sixth guy, and like their top six D are so solid. Um, and it's just a I think Keandre Miller will fit a bit better with the defensive system that Carolina has, where I think he was utilized in the wrong way on the Rangers.
yeah. No, I totally agree. The signing that kind of shocked the most people, and it's not the biggest name or anything like that, but just because of the number, was the Boston Bruins signing Tanner Jeannot to a 5 year, $3.4 million deal. Obviously, like he had he had like 2 good years with Tampa, and people have kind of been trying to chase that for a while now, and he's 28 and hasn't really done it in a while. But he is kind of a Boston Bruin guy. He's rough, he's grindy and stuff like that. Um, I don't know. I think, like you said, the cap's going to go up, so 3.4 won't look bad. But I just think Boston kind of rushed things and is trying to stay competitive when maybe that's not the direction they should be going.
Yeah. Also, it was Shane Gostisbehere I was missing on the
True,
Carolina D.
because
I
they
forgot
lost.
about him. Yeah.
McKenzie.
This signing, the money is okay. I mean, like I talked about, the cap's going up, so like a lot of these numbers are going to look different in a few years. The 5 years is where it baffles me. Like this guy hasn't done anything outside of his rookie year. He's part of one of the weirdest trades in NHL history, going from Nashville
Yeah,
to Tampa. He is a Boston type of player, exactly what you said. He's mean, but I don't think he's anything more than a third liner. And I honestly, I totally agree with what you said, that I just think Boston is under so much pressure to remain good whenever I don't think they should be. I think they should be the complete opposite. I think it's time for them to retool, rebuild. I know Boston fans probably don't want to hear this, but it might be time this year to start thinking about a David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy trade away. The pieces you would get back from them would be massive. Um, just like guys like that, it's time to start thinking about that. So I do agree where I think Boston's almost like pressured to stay good based off the type of team they are and like sort of the aura they have around that team, but I don't think they should at all looking at this roster.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. We'll move on to the Kings because you did just bring them up and some of the signings they did. Obviously, probably one of the craziest ones is if you can't beat them, acquire them. They took in a 40-year-old Corey Perry to a $2 million deal. I think it's less than two, but with bonuses or something, or is it
Yeah,
two and
it can
then
it can it can be worth up to 4 mil with performance bonuses or something. Like it's a 2 mil base salary and it can be worth up to 4 mil.
yes, and then they also brought in Cody Cece, 4.5 mil for 4 years. What else am I missing? They kept Yoel Armia 2 years, two and a half.
Capped, he was in Montreal.
Oh, was he? Sorry. I'm thinking of Philip Deneau.
He also
um,
used to be in Montreal.
yeah, I know. That's where that came from. Am I missing anything? Dumoulin?
Just Brian Dumoulin went there, yeah.
Dumoulin, 3 years, 4 mil. So a lot
All
of
their all
kind of
their signings were over 30, and they also traded away a 23-year-old Jordan Spence. So it was a bit of a weird offseason, in my opinion, for LA. Like I still think they're a solid competitive team. They trade away Jordan Spence, will open up more time for Brant Clark. They still got obviously Drew Doughty's always gonna be solid, even though he's getting older. But it was just a bit of a I don't know, signings, like bringing in Dumoulin and CC. Like Cody CC, I know a lot of people like he's not as bad of a player as people make him look, um, or make him sound, but I just still don't think you can like 4 years is maybe a bit much to tie into him based off how the last few years he has been sort of dumped around for cap dumps and like stuff like that. So that's about the only really issue I really had with it is the term.
yeah. I feel like it just kind of again kind of talking like Boston, although LA is a playoff team every year. It just kind of felt rushed and felt unnecessary to try and get over that hump. I don't know. I don't know if like these players at these terms in 3 years is going to benefit your team. But I mean, time will tell, and we'll see, right? So I'm not sure. Um, quickly, I mean, it's not a big signing, so I don't have to go over it quick. But John Klingberg gets a $4 million deal from San Jose so that they can get over the cap floor. I just thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
if you
saw
know.
that. I mean, you might as well go and take a payday for a year.
Exactly. Another one I got that's also nothing too huge before we get to another big one is Jonathan Drouin cashing in at $4 million. I can't remember how many years it's for.
I think it was just
Um,
2.
2 years, but
I think
four
it was
million
2 years.
dollars is quite a bit of money to the Islanders. Another Metro team. All the Metro teams are loading up.
Yeah, Duran got a nice payday after, he was on a bit of a league minimum signings in Colorado, but so good for him. I mean, I don't think the Islanders are going to be doing anything special in these next few years. It's kind of a bit of a retool there, bringing in some of the young guys. But yeah, I think I actually didn't mind that signing at all by them.
Yeah, and then I guess since we're here, we might as well keep going with the Metro. Nikolai Ehlers to Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying they were shocked, but it didn't really shock me at all,
He is
considering
a Carolina player.
considering how much Carolina was like invested in possibly going out and looking for Marner. A lot of people, a lot of teams probably circled back to Ehlers the second Marner came off the market, which I know we'll talk about him in a bit, whenever we get to Vegas. But it doesn't make it makes sense that Carolina was rumored to possibly offer Marner 14 years at or 14 years, 14 mil at 7 years. So it makes total sense that all of a sudden they went to the backup plan in Ehlers and I guess saying Ehlers is a backup plan is kind of like mean to him in a way, but he's not a backup plan whatsoever. The only thing that scares me about Carolina right now is their second center is Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So, or
Yeah,
Kas, did I say his name right? Jeez, I don't know. Kasperi Kotkaniemi. Yeah, yeah, right.
I don't know.
Still,
It's Cockney.
I don't know. A lot of teams in the NHL are looking for a second center, so I think that Carolina is one of them.
Yeah. So last thing before we get to Mitch Marner is because we just talked about it quickly. The San Jose Sharks. So I talked about how they signed John Klingberg to 4 mil. They also signed Dmitry Orlov to 2 years, 6.5. A team that still has $24 million in cap space. I just want to know if you found those moves slightly confusing because obviously they do have to get to the cap floor. But for a team that you'd think want to be playing their young guys, they have a 32-year-old John Klingberg on their decor. They have a 33-year-old Dmitry Orlov on their decor. They have a 34-year-old Nick Leddy on their decor. Um, I don't know. I was kind of confused by. I guess I'm not confused by the Klingberg one because it's only 1 year, so it doesn't matter. But Orlov's two, so I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think that I had an issue with it because I think a lot of the defense on their defense sort of um, prospects are still young and still, not maybe not going to be NHL ready, except for maybe next year Sam Dickinson might be ready. But um, a lot of these guys are just sort of stopgap holders until these guys get in, and even then, if the young guys are in the NHL by then, they're guys that are perfect to learn off. Nick Leddy's has been a veteran in the NHL for a while. Dmitry Orlov's won a cup. Guys like John Klingberg, offensive defenseman, he was really good in Dallas. So I guess it doesn't really shock me. It makes sense that they're all like 1 or 2 year deals because San Jose is just starting to get better, and maybe in 1 or 2 years is whenever they start to get even better. So I have no issues with it. They also have to get to the cap floor. And I think
Mhm.
bringing in the three guys that they brought in are good, people to have in the locker room for your younger players.
Yeah. So let's talk. Let's go Vegas. Obviously, a sign and trade with Toronto for Mitch Marner, 8 years, $12 million per. It's a lower number than a lot of people thought. Um, and the Leafs brought back Nicholas Waugh, which we won't talk about right now. We can get into it after. We'll focus on Mitch Marner. Obviously, people, it's not as expensive as people thought, but it just still does put Vegas over the cap space. But because this is okay, is because it sounds well. It doesn't sound like it. It is happening. Petrangelo is going on LTIR, and he might not even play ever again. So, give me your thoughts on Vegas.
Yeah, it is really sad to hear that Pietrangelo might never play again. He's always been a solid defenseman, and it makes sense why he didn't play in the Four Nations now, hearing that he was dealing with this such a critical injury. But yeah, I mean, Vegas, it totally didn't shock me that they were the team in on Mitch Marner and the team that eventually came through. 12 mils a bit, probably undervalued than what he would have got on free agency, but you look at it, no tax state, makes total sense why they got him under that. Um, the 8 year deal, it makes sense again that they wanted to get that eighth year for the sign and trade. We'll talk about Nick Waugh in a minute, but as much as it sucks losing a player like Mitch Marner, it's great that Toronto didn't lose him for nothing. You got a player back that can immediately slot in as your 3C. Um, so Vegas is going to be interesting because they have a Jack Eichel extension they need to land. He's a free agent after this year. But it's also really good that they didn't have to get rid of players like Thomas Hurdle or William Karlsson to, bring in a caliber of Mitch Marner. So that first line of, if it's Jack Eichel, Marner, and like a guy like maybe Barbashev on that first line or Deforiev or whatever his name is there, the young guy there. Vegas is going to be very scary next year, and they probably are a top five team for the Stanley Cup next year, looking at it.
100%. We will go to the Leafs side of things as obviously they got Nicholas Waugh back in this deal, probably a third line center or a winger, depending on what happens with Scott Lawton. But I think all in all, it's a pretty good return. Obviously, it's better than nothing. You got a decent right shot center for 2 years at 3 mil. It just kind of shows that Vegas obviously was talking to him beforehand because if Vegas wasn't afraid of Toronto's accusations, they would have just let him walk to free agency and signed him anyway. So I think it just shows that even though we all know that every team tampers, this just shows that teams do tamper. So I thought it was funny. Apart from that, The Leafs brought in Michelli, sorry, from was it Seattle? Sorry,
No, Utah.
Seattle, Utah. Sorry, wrong blue team. Brought in Michelli from Utah, a young winger, which is kind of the same archetype as Marner. Obviously, nowhere near as good, but kind of feels like the exact same player. They re-signed Steven Lorentz to a 3-year 1.3, and they bring in Michael Pezzetta to a 2-year $800,000. So the Leafs didn't do anything too crazy, but it seems like they're just trying to round out their roster. What do you think about Waugh and the rest of the signings?
Yeah, Michelli, he's a guy I've wanted on Pittsburgh the last few years, and he's always sort of seen as the odd man out in Utah based off their depth and, players. He was playing a third or fourth line, but I think honestly you could slot him in anywhere with either Tavares or Matthews, and he's going to be a good player. He's still young, he got him on a good cap hit. So I think that they did a really good job in sort of um, bringing in a couple of players to replace Marner. You're never going to be able to bring in a player to replace the production Marner had on that team, the 99-point seasons, top 25, 30 player in the league. You could argue he's higher. But I think they did a really good job of bringing in guys to not just one guy, like I just mentioned, but a bunch of guys to sort of um, take his production. Because you were never going to be able to replace them with a single player.
100%. So yeah, if we're looking at the Leafs lineup, it looks like what they have projected right now is Nyes, Matthews, and Domi on the right. He can play obviously all three positions, but Domi has looked better on the right. And when Marner went down, Domi did slide up there and look pretty good. On the second line, you got John Tavares, Michelli, and William Nylander, which I think could be a really good fit for Michelli. Third line, you have Scott Lawton, Nicholas Waugh, so you can have both of them play center depending on which side of the faceoffs on, and then Bobby McMahon, and then your third line they have Camp, Yarncroke, and Steven Lorentz, obviously with Robertson still being an RFA. The defense and goaltenders are the same as nothing's changed there, but it sounds like I wouldn't be shocked if the Leafs just went into the season with this roster. I don't know how many more moves are coming Toronto's way. I honestly don't think too much more. Maybe some small things here or there, but I wouldn't be shocked if that's what they went into it with.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either. I will be dead honest with you. I have heard the Leafs are interested in Erik Karlsson if Pittsburgh is looking to trade him,
I
which
hope.
I have honestly heard that. I'm not even saying that to piss you off, but I have heard that like Tree Living has reached out to Dubas about it. But anyways, going back, getting off that point, but yeah, I know I talked about it, and you don't think he's NHL ready, but I honestly would not be against giving Easton Cowan a run at the NHL because he's gonna be in pro hockey next year, whether it's the NHL, whether it's the AHL. I think he's too good for the OHL at this point in his career. So even if you're gonna burn maybe a year of his ELC, but I think you give him a chance. If it doesn't work out, you send him down to the AHL and let him develop. I got no issues with that. But yeah, the Leafs look like they're gonna go into the year with that lineup, and you might look at it and you see a lack of Mitch Marner in there, and how are they gonna do this? But I think one through or first line through fourth line, they have a really solid, balanced team, and for once, I think. Toronto has probably one of the deeper teams they have going into the season, and they were able to do that by not having to pay Marner all this money and bringing in three or four players with the money you would have used to use Marner to make themselves a deeper team. And I think it honestly will work out for them in the long run.
Yeah, I know this sounds very Leafs fan of me, but I honestly feel like they lost Marner, and I like this team better than any of the teams previous. So I mean, it'll obviously tell once the season comes, but right now I like where they're at. We will talk about Pittsburgh as you bring up Eric Carlson. They
There's
have
nothing to
made
talk
a
about. They're
trade.
they're they're terrible. I know they made a trade earlier today.
They've made a trade today.
It would have been great if it was 5 years ago when they made this trade.
Yeah, Pittsburgh for a team. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this because for a team that is trying to suck, they acquire an old Matt Dumba and a second round pick, which is valuable for pretty well. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's
Ilya,
been in the league.
is it Ilya, right?
Vladislav
Vladislav
Kolyachonov.
Kolyachonov.
He's been in the league. He's played parts of NHL seasons for 5 years now. Hasn't really put up many points. It's pretty much this. No disrespect to Vladislav, but it's pretty much Matt Dumba and a second round pick for nothing. Pittsburgh also re-signed a couple players. They re-signed Philip Tomasino 1 year, 1.75. They re-signed Connor Dewar 1.1 for 1 year. They brought in Justin Brazeau 2 years, 1.5. I really like that signing. Other than that, nothing's really gone on. Have I missed anything? Oh, they brought in Anthony Mantha, another old guy, 1 year, 2.5. Um, what do you think?
Yeah, I
What's
mean,
Pittsburgh direction
I
going?
mean,
All they've done is they've re-signed their young guys and brought in old guys.
yeah, so the Phil Tomasino and Dewar, I'll get those out of the way. I have no issues with those deals. They were RFAs, but they didn't qualify them just because they knew that they were going to bring them back on 1 year deals. So you didn't qualify them. You already had a deal in place. Those guys are fine. Middle six. Dewar was great when he came in over from Toronto. Guys like Anthony Mantha are the type of guys like the Beauvillier they picked up last year, where you're hoping that you can slot him in on a second or third line and you can flip him at the deadline for a second and third round pick. Hopefully he stays healthy. Anthony Mantha has had some good years in the past, so if he can stay healthy, I think he can produce a decent amount where you can flip him at the deadline. Bringing over a guy like Dumba, I mean, you look at it now, and they have four right-handed defensemen that are NHL ability. I know Dumba was scratched throughout the playoffs, but on this Pittsburgh team, he is going to be an NHL defenseman. So I think you're going to see a Carlson trade by the end of this offseason. I don't think Eric Carlson is a Pittsburgh Penguin by the time we start the season in late October or early October. Um, right now you got guys like Letang, you got Dumba, you got Carlson, and you got Carl Clifton. There's four right-hand defensemen I just named. So one of these guys is not going to be on the team, and it's going to be probably Eric Carlson, as two of the other guys I named got traded to the team this year. I have no issues with the Dumba trade. You traded away a guy that they got off waivers from Utah midway through the year. He was either a healthy scratch or a third pair defenseman. And you got a second round pick for him for taking on the salary. So that's another guy that they could trade at the deadline, as he is on an expiring deal. So maybe they give him second line minutes once they trade Carlson away, and they get a third or fourth round pick, and you basically got a second and a third round pick for a guy you weren't playing. So weird times in Pittsburgh, but it's been 21 years since Sid got drafted. It's time to draft a new generational prospect and Gavin McKenna. You know what's weird? As we only have a minute left, so I'll keep this quick. But 21 years, 42 years ago, so 21 years before Sid
Yeah,
got drafted, Mario got
yeah,
drafted. Oh, we're
yeah,
due.
yeah.
Pittsburgh
You're
due.
And you know what? In Pittsburgh's favor, every other team in the Metro is trying to be good, as we've seen through free
Seems like
agency
every other
signing.
team in the NHL is trying to be good.
Yeah, but that pretty much wraps up the NHL season. There's not going to be anything else like too much more impactful going on. And after all this whole podcast about talking about free agent signings and stuff like that, to close it out, does it really matter? Because Florida bought everyone back.
Florida's gonna win again.
Yeah, who's going to stop Florida? They brought everyone back. Everyone's just doing these signings to try and finish second.
Yep. All right. We will wrap it up there. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss our next Break 30 or our next podcast. And we will see you guys later.